Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Matt Mowry, Executive Editor and co-publisher of Business NH Magazine. I'm here to moderate today's discussion focused on how to implement the best AI practices in your business. A few housekeeping items before we begin. You will have the opportunity to ask questions during today's presentation. Please add them to the Q&A field at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we will get to as many of them as we can throughout today's webinar. We will also be following up this webinar with an email to each of you that will include a package of materials focused on today's discussion. And now I'd like to welcome today's guest speaker, Cameron Shilling. Cam is the director and chair of the Cybersecurity and Privacy Group for McLane Middleton Law Firm. Cam, thank you for joining us today. Can you start us off with an overview of some of the basic principles of implementing AI in your business?
Sure. Thanks, Matt, for asking me to do the presentation. Thanks to Business NH Magazine for sponsoring this, and I look forward to this presentation. As Matt highlighted, I'm going to start with maybe like 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes of going through a presentation that is much longer, but rest assured, we will send you all the full presentation materials so you have them. And the reason that we're doing it in this format is so that we can give all of you opportunity to ask questions. And Matt certainly has questions that he's going to ask me, but we really are hoping that that you all send us your questions in the Q&A so that we can answer them. All right, so I'm going to start the share and go through. You'll get the sense that I'm going through this presentation somewhat more rapidly than I typically do, but that's intended. So a couple of things to understand about kind of what you need to know when it comes to implementing AI for your business. There are four areas. One is there's a lot more dominant uses of AI than you might expect. Number two, there is a defined process for integrating AI into operations, and we'll go through that a little bit. There are absolutely rules that go along with this, and that might be one of the biggest surprises to people is that there are laws, rules, regulations that govern this area. And then the last piece is there are certain high risk or restricted uses of AI and certain prohibited uses of AI that we're going to talk a little bit about. All right, so first, when it comes to AI, we can't forget that what we now think of as AI is generative AI. But if we'd had this conversation a year ago, we would have been talking about AI in a much different function. We would have been talking about the power of AI to aggregate and summarize data, analyze it, make predictive outcomes. And sometimes this is almost referred to now as machine learning. And whether or not you call it machine learning or AI doesn't much matter. What is important is that the technology still has these functions, and these are some of its most powerful functions still. And they're particularly powerful when you realize that AI is coming in a lot of the applications we already use, which I'm going to highlight in a sec. However, we will also certainly talk about the type of AI that we all think of now, the generative AI models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, that type of stuff. I want to take a bit of a left turn before we kind of get into some of the core AI concepts, because one of the types of AI that folks are using most prolifically now is AI note takers and transcribers in video conferences like this one, like Zoom. And particularly this conference is being recorded, which means it's being transcribed. And there's lots of different AI note takers, but what they all do is they all record. And so whenever audio is recorded, we become subject to the wiretap laws. And in New Hampshire, amongst other states, all party consent is required, which means that there needs to be a process in place to gain consent whenever you use an AI note taker. And the fortunate part is there are a lot of video conference platforms, including Zoom, that have capability to build that consent in. And that's a fantastic way for companies to gain consent, not just for using AI note takers, but also generally the consent that's required to comply with privacy laws in New Hampshire and a lot of other places. So we need to think broadly about AI, not just about generative AI, because we are getting AI in a lot of different business applications. There are industry-specific applications for AI. We're getting lots of stuff in the legal field that's specifically suited to doing legal work, litigation, corporate. There's AI-specific applications being implemented into things like engineering and architecture applications, nonprofit and business accounting applications, and the like. And then, aside from kind of industry specific, AI is being implemented into the general business applications that we all use, whether it's our CRM like Salesforce or HubSpot, or an ERP like NetSuite or Epicor. It's coming built in, and sometimes when we upgrade, these AI features are already turned on, and sometimes, or more often, they need to be configured. And I won't spend too much time talking about HR systems, but I hope some folks have some questions, because HR systems is a place, or is an application where AI can be very, very powerfully used, but also comes with some risks and some fears. And the same is true with respect to AI used in IT systems and cybersecurity systems. So there's a kind of defined process that is developing or has developed for the implementation of AI. And as I go through this, it's not going to be a surprise as you listen to it. Really, this process is a robust form of any technology development program. But what I'll say before I kind of go through how we do this is there are a couple of ways in which you shouldn't do it. There are a couple of ways not to do this. And principally, the way not to do this is to simply turn on AI and let employees experiment with it. And the reasons why you don't do that, we'll go through kind of the principles and the rules. But the primary reasons why you don't do that is because it's going to cause violations of laws or regulations, problems technologically, problems operationally, that type of stuff. So there has to be a more defined and more methodical process for actually implementing AI. And I'll kind of go through it quickly here. So it always starts with a governance team. You got to put together a group of people who are actually going to be in charge of this, running it with boots on the ground. This is very much kind of a task force type of effort. And this is a cross-dimensional team, people from all over the business, leadership, finance, of course, IT, because this is a technology. But for the most part, this is a business implementation. So you need people from all your different operations groups, marketing, admin, because these people are going to help you do the first task, like identify what types of AI the business is currently using, what types of AI the business may want to use. Your accounting people will know, what's coming in the accounting application. Your marketing people will know what's coming in the CRM application. And so you need those people on the governance team to be your eyes and ears for what's being used and what you want to use. And also, they're going to be the people who get tasked with being in charge of training and testing and doing prototypes and the like. Pretty soon after, well, immediately after you decide, hey, we want to pilot ChatGPT or Claude, or we want to pilot the AI applications in Salesforce, you need to get the right licensing for it. Excuse me. I had a little frog in my throat. And the reason why you need to license it is because you have to own it. You have to control the environment. There's a reason why certain applications are free. And the free versions are free because the developers want your data. It's valuable to them. And so when we start using AI for business purposes, particularly putting confidential information in it, or customer or client information, or sensitive personal information, think HRIS systems, We have to control the environment. We have to control the confidentiality and we have to control the security of that information. And the only way you do that is by licensing and owning the environment. And then the rest of this is going to sound like a lot like how we roll out other technologies. We find groups of people to do testing. We test on non-production data. And then once that becomes reliable, we move to a prototyping model where we're using production data, but not in a real environment. And then from there, as we gain more reliability, then we move it into a prototype environment where we might be using it for a client, but in a controlled type of way. And then as we develop more and more, we're going to roll this into production. And what's important to know here is that a business may be implementing 3 or 5 or 10 different types of AI applications. It might be a general AI application like Claude, along with the AI application in Salesforce and in the HRIS system. And those might all be on different process flows or different parts of the process flow. So this doesn't have to go simultaneously for all AI applications. And also, to some extent, this is a circular type of pattern because you might do a test of Copilot and realize at the end of it, well, this is functional for certain things, but we want to integrate Claude. And so you're going to go back to the beginning of a lot of this stuff. And of course, this is all very new. So next year at this time, we'll all have some more experience doing this and realize, okay, well, now it's time to start integrating broader based AI applications. So this process is not necessarily meant all to be done at the same time and not necessarily meant to be done only once. All right, so the rules. These are kind of the top 14 principles that all businesses need to comply with. And I won't go into them chapter and verse. I think we're probably going to come up. We're going to talk about a lot of them in the Q&A session. But a couple I want to highlight. So we talked about how you have to own and control the system to ensure confidentiality and security. Business is going to have to implement a policy. There are rules of the road. For instance, whenever we implement AI, it has to be approved AI. The company has to own it and control it. Employees must be trained. There'll be IT limitations like limiting who gets access to it or what level of access an employee gets. There'll be IT rules about monitoring the activity within the application. And so people always ask me, can you send me what an AI policy looks like? Sure, and great, but the policy is not the magic. The policy it's a little bit like the rules of the road, but the magic is learning how to drive. So what really matters is not just having a good AI policy that lays out the rules of the road and employee training and stuff like that. And I'm going to go through some of the other rules of the road here, but actually making that real in your workplace, having your governance team members doing training, overseeing the process, overseeing the testing and prototyping and the like, and making sure that the rules of the road are being followed. So a couple other rules that are critical to the AI process. Number 7 is probably the bedrock rule of all AI usage, and that is that human control needs to be implemented at every step. And this is, I think, one of the biggest fears people have about AI is that it's just going to get out of control. It's going to start making decisions that that we don't want it making, that are biased, that are wrong, that it'll hallucinate and give us results that are just simply not real. And human control is the antidote for that. And human control comes in at every step. So humans decide what data we're putting into an AI application, either to train it or to give it a prompt or to help us generate an output. Humans are in charge of auditing both the data input as well as the data output, as well as the results kind of overall of an AI system. Humans are in charge of ensuring that we are transparent with our customers, telling folks when we are using AI to generate to generate a result. And humans ultimately have to control the vendors that we use to ensure that those vendors are being transparent with us when they're using AI to produce a generated result that they're sending to us. Last two things I'll talk about is the high risk and the prohibited uses. So there's certain types of AI that are classified as high risk. And this doesn't mean that you can't use AI for these purposes. In fact, AI could be incredibly valuable. Think of AI used in the healthcare field, or AI used in the cybersecurity field. Very, very powerful, but also potentially dangerous. AI in the healthcare field could lead to misdiagnoses, could lead to kind of bias results on healthcare decision making. AI in the cybersecurity field could break down and could allow hackers to get in, or could be hijacked by hackers and used as a tool for attacks. And so it's not that we can't use AI for these functions, it's that we have to implement additional safeguards. And one of the ways we do that is by conducting AI use risk assessments. So listed here are a couple of the areas that businesses typically are going to need to conduct an AI risk assessment. Whenever we're using AI to process sensitive personal information, and that often happens in the HR process. Also, high risk circumstances involve whenever we're using AI to control infrastructure or security. So think HVAC systems or physical security systems or cybersecurity systems. And then lastly, there are just certain things that either get legally prohibited or just make sense. So there are legal prohibitions against using AI to manipulate people in ways that are damaging to them, or categorizing people based on protected characteristics. Those are, kind of common sense things we all would say, of course we wouldn't do that. But then there are things that companies that aren't necessarily illegal that companies still should prohibit by policy. Impersonating people or events, like deepfakes, using AI to hack, other illegal or immoral behavior and stuff like that. So we use the privacy policy as a mechanism to impose certain restrictions on employee use of AI that may not necessarily be regulatorily prohibited. All right, so that rounds out kind of the presentation. Matt, I'm looking forward to questions from you and the audience.
Well, the audience questions are already rolling in, and just so everyone knows, your questions do come to us anonymously, so do not be shy about asking any and all of your AI-related questions. You have a great expert here. Let's dive into the audience questions first. Our first question is, if I use AI-free tools to help me write a book or create a picture, can I copyright them as my own?
That's a great question. The answer right now is probably not. However, I don't think that's the final answer on this. The prevailing kind of authority now on whether or not a person has intellectual property rights on something created by copyright is no, but I don't think that's going to be the final answer, because AI is really a tool. It can be analogized to writing something in Microsoft Word or using the internet to research a concept. And the fact that AI is a much more powerful tool than just Word or the internet doesn't necessarily mean that the creative concepts that justify intellectual property protection shouldn't apply. And so I think ultimately the final word is that there will be intellectual property rights in content created by an individual using AI. And the last thing I'll say about this is, as you use AI more and more, whether it's generative AI or like AI in Salesforce or in an HRIS system, you will realize that the human control and the human input is vitally important to the output that an AI application gives you. And so as you do this, you'll realize this isn't about the technology generating a result. This is about the human working with the technology that is generating the result.
Thank you. Our next question is, how can you identify an AI hallucination?
Yeah.
And maybe for those who aren't familiar with it, what is an AI hallucination?
Yeah. So, particularly early on in the development of AI, people and the developers were worried that the power of AI could generate something that was fictitious. And certain AI agents or apps are designed to be solicitous. They want to give you an answer. And so when they can't find an answer, in fact, they make it up. And that's what a hallucination is. You ask, if you were to ask the AI application, what is the dram shop law in New Jersey? And if New Jersey doesn't have a dram shop law, it might make it up and say, well, New Jersey's dram shop law is X, Y, and Z, and what the AI engine is really doing is extrapolating from New York and Delaware law or something like that. So there's a couple of ways to do this. So first of all, you need to drill. And one of the things, and remember, AI is powerful, so make AI drill for you. So when you create prompts, create a prompt like, can you tell me what the dram shop law is in New Jersey? Give me citations to the law that I can access on the internet. You also can do things like say, rely on only publicly available statutes, regulations, court cases, or other authority. Give me all the sites and don't hallucinate. So you can use the power of AI to make sure it's right. And ultimately, you got to drill. I mean, even when I give AI a prompt that says, rely only on published cases and statutes and stuff like, give me citations, I still have to read it. I still have to go and look. And sometimes you'll notice like when you're doing a Google search and you use the Google AI result, you'll get a little paperclip type sideways paperclip. That's a link. And that's telling you can go see where the AI engine got the information from. And when you go and look at it, you start realizing, oh, it's taking all of this, it's like doing this great extrapolation summary, beautiful, very helpful, but it's taking it all from 3 websites, and they're not really exactly saying what the extrapolation is. So you really got to drill and make sure that the information that is being relied on is genuine.
Thank you. Our next question is one I'm sure is on a lot of people's minds. Is data uploaded into an AI tool kept anonymous, or is it able to be used by AI in answers and responses to other competitive companies?
Totally depends. The answer is if you use an AI engine to input any information that you don't want the AI developer to own or use, then you need to license it and ensure that the configurations on it are set so that there's no sharing. And so all of the generative AI engines have this type of licensing and configuration setting available. You just actually have to buy it and then configure it. Um, that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing is most of the AI engines that are going to be built into things like Salesforce or an ERP or an HRIS system, they're going to come licensed because you're going to buy the underlying application. And generally, as a general matter, those applications are set not to share and not to allow the developer to use your data, your input or your outputs to train the model. The last thing I'll say is you always have to check what the licensing terms are. And we represent a lot of clients and we do a lot of this work where you'll be surprised every once in a while. So you look at HubSpot or NetSuite and the licensing is going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to say they don't use your data that your data is confidential and then we'll use your data to train the model. But then you'll get to some of these mid-tier firms and the contract language will be totally wrong. It'll say that they own your data, it's not confidential. And then you talk to them and you say, you can't do this. And they say, well, we don't do it any differently. And sometimes you have to make the decision, and we do this for McLane when we're piloting applications, hey, if they're not going to agree that the data that you put in is yours and is confidential, and if they're not going to promise not to use it, you got to think twice about using that application. But so you absolutely have to drill down on what the actual licensing language says.
Thank you. Our next person had two questions. I'm going to address their second one first, and that's is the PowerPoint available for us to download? That's going to be included in the email that we're going to be sending to you, so you will have access to Cam's PowerPoint. So their original question is, can we use AI to create the AI policy?
Sure. Whether or not it's right is a different story. So, look, I'm a lawyer with 30 years of experience. I use AI for certain legal functions, including to create things. But this is what I will say. I'll just say two things about that. First of all, the product that you get out of an AI engine, even a really, really good one. I use Claude for a lot of like hardcore legal stuff. But even if you've got like ChatGPT and you've got it configured for expert model and you even the result you get out of it in the first instance is never good enough. And so what you can do is you can keep working on it. You keep saying, okay, I need more specificity around the point in this AI policy about access use limitations. And so after the first draft, you give it a follow-up response and it gives you another draft. And then you keep going and keep drilling and you keep going and keep developing. And at some point in time, when you're 10 or 12 drafts in, all of a sudden you realize that all you use the AI for is to help you write, whereas the actual analytical ideas and judgment calls are being made by you. And if you know the field, like, look, I've been drafting AI policies for the last couple of years. If you know the field, I know the analytical analysis. I know what to look for. I know what to look for stuff when it's missing. But when you don't know what needs to be in a policy, you might not catch that. Again, the policy is not the magic. Getting the good policy is important, but making the policy matters the magic. The second thing I'll say is that prompts are incredibly important. So one of the things about AI is it's new, but it's not new. It's not new in the sense that it's just a powerful technology, and we're all used to using technologies like the internet and our phones and computers and all this sort of stuff. And a lot of what we as users do with AI is not necessarily going to be new. What will be new and what we will all learn as a new skill in life is prompt development. So if I want to write an AI policy, and I know what I'm doing, and I just want the AI to help me write it, and let's say the policy is going to be 5 pages, thereabouts. I'm probably going to write a 500 to 700 word prompt, very specific, telling the AI what I want. And by doing that, the result is going to be 1,000 times better than if I had said to the AI, I'd like an AI policy that's 5 pages long for a law firm with 130 lawyers and 250 employees that practices commercial law. That prompt is going to give me plain vanilla, which may or may not be right for me. So prompt development is both critically important and is a skill that we are all going to be learning as we go through this progression in life.
Thank you. Our next question is, do you have any thoughts on the prospects for state regulation of AI in New Hampshire, whether broadly or on an industry-specific basis?
Wow, Matt, some of these questions are the stuff that we came up with too.
I
Uh,
know.
so the answer is yeah. As a lawyer, I know exactly what's going on. So I'll give a little bit of background. So some of you may know there is a broad-based AI law in the European Union, which is aptly called the EU AI Act. Um, and there's also a broad-based law in Colorado about this. And the Colorado law, I don't find particularly useful. It was not terribly well written. It's mostly geared towards AI developers, whereas most of us aren't going to invent AI applications. We're going to deploy them. That's the language that's being used, developers versus deployers. And the EU AI Act is much more geared towards both developers and deployers. As also some of you also may know, the Trump administration attempted to pass a law that was built into the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, that said essentially that states couldn't regulate this AI, couldn't regulate AI. That got stripped out, and so the administration is trying to do the same thing by executive order, and that is not really necessarily working. We'll have to see where it goes, but the reality is, I thought we were going to get state enacted broad-based AI laws like we did in the privacy field. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, at least in the next year or two. I think what we're going to see at the state level is very specific laws, like we've seen in the past couple of years. Like in New Hampshire, we have a law against deep fakes in political advertising. Okay, that takes care of one very small problem of AI, but not the broader problem. I don't think we're going to see a lot of state-specific, broad-based state-specific AI law happening in the next year. Midterm elections come around, some state legislatures change, and maybe a different story for next legislative session or the one thereafter. But right now, what we are using to guide us is the EU AI Act, cybersecurity principles, which apply in the AI space, and privacy principles, which also apply in the AI space. So this is a bit of an amalgam between AI regulation and best practices. Stay tuned. There's more to come on that.
Thank you. Next question is more of a nuts and bolts kind of question. Is there an app that anyone can use to determine if something has been written with AI? Do college professors use something to determine this? So how do you know if a document you're getting has been written using AI?
Yeah, so schools have applications, and high schools and colleges have applications that they can run this stuff through to see if something's been written by AI. Um, whether these applications work well is a different story. There's false positives that well exceed 30 to 40% on some of this stuff. Also, if you think about it, like when I was talking about creating an AI policy, if I'm 10 drafts in, this might now not start looking and sounding a lot like an AI created piece of work, but it may start looking and sounding a lot more like I did it, and that can be hard to detect. What I will say is that the solution for this problem is not technological. It's not detecting whether or not something has been created using AI. The solution for this problem is actually to embrace AI and adopt principles and morals around how we use it. And schools are doing this. The good schools are realizing, look, we're not going to stop students from using AI. The good businesses are doing this. We're not going to stop employees from using AI. For schools, what they're doing is they're building AI into the curriculum. And so they're saying, okay, these are our general rules about how you use AI. It has a lot to do with transparency and honesty. They develop courses where they teach students how to use AI. They develop courses and course syllabus where you can use AI for certain parts of the project, not other parts. They're challenging students, okay, if you're going to use AI, then you got to, I want you to do this assignment twice, once by yourself and then once using AI. And then there are rules. And so as a society, like, we have to embrace this and create norms. So if I said to you, I want you to tell me, if I said to Matt, hey, Matt, can you go out and do some research for me and tell me, the industries that developed in Ukraine from 1990 to 2015. And by the way, Matt, you can only use encyclopedias. You can't use the internet. It'd be like, what? What? That's stupid. Why would I, I'd be like prohibiting his use of technology. And AI is the same way. Like if you tell a student, or an employee, you cannot do this, the answer is going to be what? Why not? Whereas if you tell the employee, okay, I'd like you to do this, and if you want to use AI, okay, our AI system is ChatGPT or Copilot. You have to use our enterprise version. I want you to make sure that when you generate this, you provide cites so that we can check it. We're going to have a conversation about what part was created by AI and what wasn't. Let's have a conversation about the prompts you're going to use. So it's controlling use of AI is not going to be effective by trying to prohibit it. Controlling use of AI is really going to be effective by embracing it and then creating norms around it.
Thank you. Our next question says, you mentioned doing an AI risk assessment before implementation. What do you recommend be part of the risk assessment, or is there a tool that can help guide a risk assessment?
Yeah. So the answer is the tools we use are the privacy risk assessment stuff that we've done. So, and there you can find some of this stuff publicly available. Like there are companies that sell apps that can help you do privacy risk assessments. But again, the form isn't the magic. The thought process is the magic. And so when you do a risk assessment, this is how you think of it. Think of it. So sorry, I'm a business and econ guy. So I work in spreadsheet mode. And a risk assessment can be thought of in this way. Each line of information is a row, or each way in which you use information is a row. So let's say we're going to use an AI system we're going to use AI in an HRIS system. And we're going to use it, let's say, for evaluating candidates. And so a row is going to be application intake, interview, analysis of interview summaries and note taking, analysis of interviewer feedback. Maybe it's going to be, internet research of applicants, internet research on their writings. So each way in which you're going to use AI is going to be analyzed. That's the row. The column is things like what information is taken in. Is it sensitive information versus non-sensitive information? Um, how are we going to ensure that the data we're using has integrity? Um, what human controls the prompt? What's the output? What's the risk of the of danger? So, for instance, if you're having an AI application read an applicant's cover letter and resume and look at their data, it may be that there's bias built into that. Like we want the job description says we want only people with master's degrees from top 20 universities with a grade point average of more than 3.5. Well, you might be getting a lot of white men from privilege, and that could be a problem. And so, bias might be a risk, and therefore, then the next question is, okay, the next column is how are you going to mitigate that? And usually that is going to involve some aspect of human control. And at the end of all of these rows and columns, you're going to come to a conclusion, a risk conclusion. And the conclusion you want is we usually categorize things as either high risk, low risk, or high risk, medium risk, or low risk. You want to drive everything to medium or low risk, and you do that by mitigating the dangers. And that's your risk assessment. It's a spreadsheet with rows and columns where you come to a conclusion at the end. And one of the reasons why you want to drive your conclusion to medium or low risk is obviously you don't want to do things that are high risk. Not without mitigation, but also these assessment reports are publicly available. Under privacy law, this is stuff that is not publicly available to regulators if they ever ask. And so that's the process for doing a risk assessment. There's no magic to it. What the real magic is forcing yourself to go through the analysis to ask yourself truly and genuinely, how is this working? What are the risks? How am I going to mitigate the risks? And after I mitigate the risks, is this worth it to me? Is this a justified activity?
Thank you. Our next question is, if I upload health information to get information from AI, can that be tracked back to me?
Probably. I mean, if you upload identified health information, you're giving your health information to some third party. I guess if you're using an AI application like for your own personal health circumstances, um, I would say that's probably not the greatest use of an AI application. If you do that, you're probably going to want to have operated in a licensing environment, a licensed environment. If you're an individual, you can do that. Like as an individual, you can license ChatGPT and then go in and configure it to not share and make your inputs and data be confidential and all that sort of stuff. That's available at the consumer level. You just have to actually spend some money and then go and configure it. For businesses that are using AI in the health setting, and there are many, and it is a good use. There are all kinds of controls around this, and confidentiality and security are key. So if you're going to use AI to analyze health information, you need to ensure confidentiality and security.
What is your take on the potential impact of AI on cybersecurity and the cyber insurance market?
Ah, this sounds like a question from a lawyer. I like this question. All right. So there's two parts to this. There's cybersecurity and there's insurance. I'm going to take both parts. All right. So first of all, on the cybersecurity field, it's a little unknown just how AI is going to affect cybersecurity, but there are a couple of ways which we already know cyber AI is being used with respect to cybersecurity attacks. One is it's being used as a powerful attack mechanism. So AI is being used to create emails that are very legitimate, topically appropriate, in the correct language and grammar and all that sort of stuff. AI is also being used to create voice recordings and ways to talk to other people. So, it used to be Matt sends me an email where Matt and I are in a transaction or something like that, and I need to send him money. And so Matt sends me an email that says, "Hey, Cam, can you send the money to my Bank of America account? Here's the account number and the routing number." And I, being smart, the good cybersecurity lawyer, I call up Matt and I say, "Hey, Matt, I just got an email from you that says, you want me to transfer this to your Bank of America account number. Here's the account number. Can you tell me the account number? Can you tell me the routing number?" And somebody has hacked Matt's phone and created a AI bot that can talk in Matt's voice. And now all of a sudden, my great mechanism to verify that Matt is actually giving me these directions isn't so great because somebody is creating has his voice in addition to hijacking his phone. Both would be admittedly difficult to do, but hackers are sophisticated. And the same thing is true with video images. So AI is being used as an incredibly powerful mechanism. And that's not the only way. I mean, AI is very, as an application, it's not just powerful, it's very malleable. And so it can adapt quickly to the types of applications that we have to protect our systems. And so it's AI, attacking systems. The other way AI is being used is in the security field. And so many of us who have advanced-based threat detection systems like CrowdStrike, Interceptor X, Carbon Black, I'm sure I'm forgetting one of the major ones, but these advanced threat detection systems, they're designed to detect anomalies, strange things. Cam logging on at 2 in the morning, downloading stuff. Cam logging on from London when he logged on from New Hampshire 3 hours previously. Cam encrypting stuff, or Cam's machine encrypting stuff. They're designed to detect anomalies, and that those anomalies are they're detectable because these AI systems can analyze massive amounts of data quickly and make predictions based on about what might be anomalous or should be anomalous, and then they can sequester stuff and make decisions to sequester stuff before humans can ever get at it. So that's the second way AI is affecting the cybersecurity world. The third way, and this is probably going to be the most significant development of cybersecurity attacking in the last 5 years at least, and that is that attackers are going to piggyback on the AI applications that we have.
Hmm.
So if I'm using Copilot in my Microsoft 365 system, and an attacker can get access to my Microsoft 365 credentials and log in, circumvents my multi-factor authentication and gets into my Microsoft 365 system, all of a sudden now they can use Copilot. They can use Copilot to scan my OneDrive, scan SharePoint, can scan other users' accounts that I have access to. And this amazingly powerful application now becomes a weapon that exists in our own environment to attack us. That's probably the next major development in cybersecurity threats. So those are the big areas that we know so far. All right, next is insurance. Um, so this is not such an easy answer. I think that I think that insurance is going to deal with AI and AI risk in a couple of different ways. So first of all, there's going to be lots of ways where policies already cover and are likely to continue to cover. So for instance, a cyber liability policy is going to cover an attack that is generated by an AI agent or that uses our own AI application within our own system. The language within cybersecurity policies is already broad enough, and I don't think those are going to get changed. I don't think they need to be changed. Let's talk about now some areas where insurance is might cover but might not cover and is likely to be adjusted. For instance, a lot of businesses have employment policy liability insurance, EPLI. And essentially this covers businesses who get sued for engaging in something that is purportedly discriminatory or harassment or stuff like that. And right now, that language in those policies would cover a decision that an HR person makes relying on AI that results in discrimination and harassment. Okay. So right now it's going to cover it, but carriers are going to get smart to this, just like they get smart to other types of risks that present major liability that they don't have packed into the underwriting and they don't have built into the premium. And so, we're likely going to see a carve out from EPLI policy for an AI-induced discrimination or harassment, and then the carrier sell you an endorsement to the policy. That's really the way carriers work. They're happy to insure risk, they just want you to pay for it. Same thing is going to happen with errors and omissions, and that's really like where we're probably going to see the biggest activity and the biggest fights with carriers, whether or not errors and omissions policy covers AI errors. For instance, think of a lawyer. We have malpractice insurance. That's just a type of errors and omissions policy. If I do something like analyze a corporate transaction, due diligence documents using AI technology, and the AI doesn't turn up, or I don't use the AI in a way that turns up an issue, and it doesn't get noticed, is my errors and omissions policy going to cover? And I think, again, insurers are just not going to want to cover that type of liability, but what they will do is exclude it and endorse it. So there is more to come on this in the insurance field, but this is a watch out, because as we all, as businesses, start to renew our insurance policies, we need to be really careful that our agents are aware of and telling us when these AI exclusions are coming. And then we need to make the decision, do we want to endorse that? Do we want to buy the AI endorsement?
We have a couple of questions that are related and on a topic of over disclosure. So one is, are there disclosure requirements if something had any AI influence? For example, a client report where we may ask AI to check for typos, grammar, and help in creating more understandable language. And another person would know, if I create an AI clone to use for customer service or marketing efforts, do I need to disclose it as AI versus a real person?
Yeah, a great question. So this is that concept of transparency that we talked about, both that we have with our customers. So do we need to be transparent with our customers, but also transparency that we ask for from our vendors. All right. This is probably the most unsettled area of AI law. The EU AI Act requires transparency for certain types of uses of AI, including things like human resource systems, automated decision making in education with respect to admissions and stuff like that. So transparency is required for certain AI systems that can affect people, particularly make decisions about people. But there's a lot of applications of AI that are impactful where we don't yet know if transparency is going to be required. What I would say is, and what we do for clients and with clients, is we build transparency into the process. Transparency is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I think most people, some business leaders think, well, if I tell my customers that I'm using AI, they're going to tell me that I can't, and that's going to impair the way I do business. And that's not really been our experience. Our experience has been that transparency builds awareness, it builds understanding, it builds appropriate dialogue, and it almost always facilitates the relationship rather than degrades it. So, we're building into our contracts, both for clients, who contract with customers, as well as, when we are, asking a vendor for the contract, we build into those contracts a transparency principle. And look, not every contract is the same and not every relationship is the same. Your relationship with your daughter's dance studio or, your son's art studio or something like that, that's a little different than your relationship, say, with your lawyer. If when you're retaining a lawyer, you're definitely going to want to know, you should want to know how much of the work product is going to get generated by AI. If so, what are the controls? Does the law firm have a policy? What is the policy? That contract's going to be more extensive. Whereas, when I'm signing my son up for, a painting class, yeah, they're going to have his information. And might they use AI? Okay, yeah, but okay, I might not be as rigorous about that. But these concepts of transparency, they need to be understood, communicated, and oftentimes built into the contracts that either we have with our vendors or that we have with our customers.
Thank you. You had mentioned bias before. I know businesses are looking into using AI in their HR functions. Are they, how are they, first of all, integrating AI into HR, and are they running into legal troubles as a result, especially when it comes to issues of bias?
So the answer is yes, of course, businesses are running into issues of bias, and I'll explain why. But the answer is there's no more bias in an AI function than there is in a human function. All right, so take a step or three back. So HRIS systems use AI agents. And remember, the power of an AI agent is not just to create a generated product like you would with ChatGPT, but it's to analyze massive volumes of data, summarize it for you, give you analytics about it, and make predictions. Those are like the core functions of AI that sometimes people forget. So let's say let's say you want to run a performance evaluation system using AI. And in your old performance evaluation system, you got written, performance evaluations from the manager, maybe one from the employee himself or herself. You maybe got some metrics about their job performance, but that's really what you got. And you gave people performance evaluations and then raises and stuff like that, maybe bonuses and other types of stuff. Now with AI, you can do things like have AI analyze their email traffic, their written work product, the amount of time they spend doing tasks, their interactions with other employees, their interactions with customers on the phone, their interactions with your CRM. In theory, as much data as you can collect can be used now by an HRIS system for performance evaluation. Um, and so, and then you're going to ask your HRI system, okay, based on all of this immense amount of data, I want you to evaluate the candidate. And the HRI system is going to have to be built with the factors that are used to evaluate a candidate. And that's where the bias can come in. If your performance evaluation system is you typically use the following 10 factors. How effectively does this person communicate with clients and with with coworkers? But you've got an employee with a speech impediment or a learning impairment, you might be building bias in where you don't really, I mean, no one intends to do that. No one, when I say it, you think, oh, of course, I would never do that. But, you just don't necessarily think about that stuff. Or let's say you're going to program, and this commonly happens. You're going to program your performance evaluation system or your promotion system based on who in the past has been successful at your business and what their profiles are and what their performance evaluations were. And there can be historical bias built in. And so that's how bias can get into a system. It's just the history that has always been baked in with some kind of bias. And the way you avoid that is it's always about human control. And the thing to remember here, and this is the last thing I'll say about this, and then I'll stop talking, is I don't believe that HRIS systems or AI systems in HR are necessarily any more biased than humans, particularly when humans are in control. So, for instance, let's say you do that whole performance evaluation system, and you're going to do it for 10 employees in a particular department, and you need to decide, you're going to need to promote two of these employees to project manager positions. And so the HRIS system with the AI does the performance evaluations, gives you summaries, and rates these 10 employees and who should be promoted and what raises each of these people should get. And then ultimately a person has to ask, does that make sense? Do I agree with that? Do I think that the technology might have been over-factoring one particular issue, under weighting another issue? Um, Ultimately, the AI, particularly with the human control, is not necessarily going to get it any more right or any more wrong than the human did before. Mistakes, good decisions are going to be made, hopefully the vast majority of the time, and sometimes mistakes are going to be made.
Well, thanks, Cam. We've come to the end of our time. Before we wrap up, Cam, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll share one thing. So, um, AI is here. There's no possible way to avoid it. Um, if, as a business, you want to try to avoid it, or you want to try to wait for other people to work the bugs out, you're going to be behind. And being a year behind is in this development phase is too long. Being 2 years behind is way too long. Embrace it. Um, and you don't have to embrace every aspect of it and every aspect of your business, but start going through that process that we talked about to get it integrated into your business. Form a governance team, start looking at some use case scenarios, start doing testing and prototyping. Your learning curve will be immense, and you won't be behind the eight ball. So um, I would say, look, as businesses, we really need to be comfortable embracing this, and then working with it.
Well, thank you, Cam, for all your insights today. And thank you to our audience for all the great questions. Certainly made my job easy. Um, Thank you for joining us today. And remember to keep an eye on your email for materials covering the topics addressed in today's webinar. And we hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thank you.
Thank you.